Well, good evening, everyone. Meteorologist Michael Wilhite here with SouthernIndianaWeather.com, bringing you the latest long-range update, the first of many of these that I'll be doing over the wintertime. I'm well sure we've got a pattern that's locked in right now that's kind of boring, the doldrums, if you will, but that's about to change. We've got a pretty exciting wintertime pattern coming up here for you as you head in. You can see very strong blocking up here around Greenland. That would be indicated by this high pressure over here. You've got another ridge of high pressure out here to our west, and then you've got a big dip in the jet stream here. And if you all sort of put the jet stream in motion, it's sort of going something like this. You can just see this sort of wacky pattern in the jet stream where you've got this highly amplified ridge out west, and you've got this trough. Now, how exactly far down this trough actually goes is yet to be in question. Sort of take a look at this. This is on the GFS here, a very deep trough being predicted out here with strong blocking, strong high latitude blocking out here, strong ridging out to the west, and so that's basically spilling cold air from Canada down into here, and it could get very cold with this. So let's take a look at the indices, and I think it'll explain it a little bit more here. So first off, the Arctic Oscillation, the AO, this is cold air on the move from Canada, available to be down. When it's in the negative, that's cold air spilling into the United States, and you can see we are going well down into the negative territory here on all of the models. Cold air will be available as we head later on into the month, no doubt here. By the way, it usually takes these things a few days of lag time to reach us, so the fact that it's getting so strongly into the negative, it's building up, it's going to get there. NAO, the North Atlantic Oscillation, that's your blocking. That's your blocking up around Greenland that you noted right up in here. And when this is strongly in the negative, you get that blocking pattern in, firmly into the negative on that. PNA, whenever it's in the positive, that indicates a ridge out to the western part of the United States and a trough out in the eastern part of the United States. And so that's the opposite of what we see going on right now. We're kind of more into a zonal flow right now, but that's about to change. This has the look of what you want to see if you like wintertime weather. All right, so if you like wintertime weather, well, look at this blocking that you've got sort of going on up in here. This is strong blocking up here in the eastern regions over here of the country. I'm stumbling over my words here. Sorry, my computer is acting kind of weird on me there with this zoom. That's sort of throwing me off. But so you've got this big ridge up here that's forcing a trough down like this and sort of coming up, and then you got this strong ridge out to the west here. So how much of this, how far south will this trough dig? That's still a question that remains to be seen, but there's really good model agreement that we're going to see this. All right, so here's the GFS from today. And as you go at the end of next week into next weekend, that's whenever you're starting to see this pattern start to shape up. So here's the GFS, and you can see there it is. There's that big trough. If you switch over to the ensembles, the GFS ensembles show this as well. So good support down here as well. And by the way, typically with this, whenever you see these cooler shades here, the greens and then into the purples, some that you see, that's very, very cold air spilling down into here. The GFS ensembles, not quite as cold as the regular GFS, but still cold, good support there. If you go over to the Euro is ridiculously cold on its trough coming in here, and this would be a pretty big front that is moving through, spilling that down in. The EPS, which is its version of the ensembles, again pretty cold there as well. And even the Canadian starting to see this. The Canadian only goes out to the December the 8th, which is the same time frame as these, but the Canadian's a little slower on this, but there you can see that trough digging down too. So the idea is there. The timing is different in each of the modelings, just a little bit on there, but anywhere from about the 7th to the 11th is the time frame that you really want to watch out for. And again, all these models vary that timing just a little bit different, but the idea is that cold is coming. If you take a look at the latest of the Euro weeklies, they show this as well. The Euro weeklies here showing us a cold eastern half of the country here, and so this is for week 3. This is as you get later on into December, very cold eastern half of the country, and then a cold and a warm western half. Again, that's that trough. Even the CFS model starting to catch on to this idea, that same time period that you saw for the Euro weeklies, in good agreement with this. So really what you see with this is very, very good model agreement across the spectrum that we've got some cold cold air coming. It's not a question of the cold. It's only a question of how cold it is going to get at this point. We do have some warming potentially going on in the stratosphere, and that could displace at least a lobe of the polar vortex down enough that we could have some pretty intense weather with this. It's something that we're going to be watching out for. Are we looking at highs here in the 30s in southern Indiana? Are we looking at highs in the 20s? Well, the data shows a little bit of both. Here is the latest GFS, and you can see that we stay warm, for a pretty good chunk of time here. We stay in the 60s and then upper 50s here, knock back to the lower 50s for a good little time here all the way through December the 5th. But once you hit that 6th and then the 7th, then the downward slide takes after that. We're looking at a high of 34 here, according to that. If you look at the euro for the same time is a little bit cooler here. It brings the front end maybe just a little bit faster here, but there's been differences in the euro here too. So this is the latest euro, but one run prior to this. Look how cold it got on December the 7th. The latest run has a high of 40. The run prior to that had a high of only 27. So there's some differences in the data. The modeling is still going to be working this out of exactly how cold this blast is going to come. But highs in the 20s and 30s are looking very likely, and I would not be surprised at all to see some lows in the teens here in Indiana out of this as well. Now the question then comes with that is, okay. We got the cold coming into place. What about the precipitation, right? Well, to this, we're going to look out into Southeast Asia. And you say, Michael, why in the world would you look into Southeast Asia? Because we're going to look at the East Asia rule. The East Asia rule, also called the typhoon rule, is a rule that's been established for a long time. And basically it says what you see here going on the peninsula of Korea here correlates about 6 to 10 days later, roughly, in the eastern part of the United States. So if you've got kind of this zonal flow going on over here and this warmth going on, 6 to 10 days later, that's what you'll get in here. If you get troughs coming in, well, that's indicative that you're going to have a cold front that moves through. Ridges, then you're going to have a warm up that comes through. So by looking at this, we can identify several cold fronts that's going to come through. Let me put this into motion here for you. And you see the first of them here on about November the 30th. This is the first trough that's starting to dig through. That would correlate to about a front passage of around December the 7th. Lo and behold, that's about the time we get that first of the cool blast kicking in. So is it going to stick around, that cool blast, for a while? You can get some hints from this. Now, so this is this trough then retreats. Notice the next trough starts to dig down in here, and so by about the 4th or 5th of December, you've got this pretty strong trough digging down into here. That's going to correlate to around the 10th or 11th of December for another front that would move through. And then as that moves out, you've got another little dip in the jet stream starting to move down here, and so come about the 7th or so here of December, 7th, 8th, right around in there. What you see here is another pretty strong one, and then it's followed up by another little one here on the 9th there as well. And so about the 15th to the 17th, you're looking at possibly a couple of cold fronts moving through. Then you warm it up with a ridge just temporarily here for a few days, but notice it's not lasting overly long here. By the time you get into the 14th of December, and there are some different data implied in this. If I were to show you one run prior to this in time, the run this morning had a trough here, whereas the run now this afternoon ends up having more of a ridge. So the longer you go out in time, the stronger that you get in here. But if this one from this morning is right, then around December 22nd, we could possibly see another front. So let's look then into the GFS and get some ideas on what it's showing. So we'll start it out here today. Nothing really, quiet weather to worry about for a few days, as pretty zonal flow otherwise, but this front moves through on Thursday, and it's not going to be much. Some spotty showers come along with this. Nothing really to write home about. Dry after that for a while. Another front passes there, and then you get another high passing behind it. Here's where you're starting to get interesting. Now we're coming into the 5th of December, so you're starting to get Tuesday of next week. You're starting to get into when that pattern change. Here's the first front that moves through, and that is through here about the 6th of December. I think this may personally be just a little bit fast here on the GFS. Again, the 6th or 7th, the 7th with the time frame we looked at from the East Asia rule. 6th would still be right there with it. So there's your first front that passes areas in there with that. Looks like just rain for us, possibly some snow up here for northern Indiana, but not cold enough here for this yet. But as you look at these blue dashed lines, what is that? Well, these are your thickness lines. And once you get to the 540 thickness line down here, that first blue line, that's typically what you see as your rain-snow changeover line. And so whenever you see those coming over us, you know that you've got cold air invading in the upper atmospheres. And so it's going to get mighty cold with this. And as you take a look at this, you see even some lake effect snows going on up here, places around Buffalo, and even up in some of the other Great Lakes on here. We'll have to watch this, but then watch what this system does. You got this. See what this is right here? This is a displacement of the polar vortex, is essentially what the GFS is showing here. And so that's going to bring some cold air down with it. And watch what it does. It spins up this low pressure. You've got this little wave that's moving off here. And watch how this wave goes. And it spins up a little low. And as it sort of rounds the trough here, you get a little swath of snow that could then potentially go on with this. All right. And then as this goes, and then another little wave is right behind it. And then you've got yet another little clipper system starting to dive in here behind this as well. Well, when exactly is this system? Well, this first system that moves here is about the 9th. Around the 9th, and then you've got another one followed right behind it on the 10th. Remember that I said right around the 10th, 11th from the East Asia rule would be a system. So this sees it in two pieces, but the idea is verified there in the modeling. Does that mean it'll be snow? No, but it does at least correlate with what we see in the East Asia rule, the organic forecasting kind of ideas. So it lends it to us some ideas that a signal will roll through there and that we need to watch out for. So there's some legitimacy to that. Will it necessarily be snow? Depends on how fast that cold air locks in place, and the models are going to have to battle that out for a little while. And then remember I said about the 15th you might see something else going on down here and there. You see right there, this model goes out to the 14th, but watch what you've got developing down in here. You've got something developing down in here. Could you see something come up and slide up in this direction for there? It's very possible with that. All right, so let me dial in a little bit more onto this system for the 9th and 10th and just show you the potential that the modeling this morning had with this one. If this one were to come true, this would be a snow lover's dream. All right, so you started off here. This is, this is Friday the 8th right here. There it is diving in on Friday night and into Saturday morning. You've got a pretty deepening low pressure system that dives into there, bringing a pretty heavy swath of snow to portions of the area. And then watch this right behind it as it pulls out. That next wave is moving on through. Well, what kind of snow could you end up? And there's that clipper moving down right behind it too. It'd be a very active setup. What kind of snow would you get? Well, take a look at what the GFS model is doing with this. I mean, you're talking about some ridiculous snows here. You're talking about this is a 10 inches of snow right up in there, almost 7 up there, and you still got a good 5 inches down here, 10 out in here. You're talking anywhere in this purple is just really heavy snow. You're talking 6+ inches as you get down into that. So this is no insignificant snowstorm if this were to verify. Now the question is, will this verify? And of course the answer to that is that, just keep in mind that we are, from the beginning of this, about 240 hours or so away from this happening. Between hour 252 and hour 264, that's when the GFS spills this on us. So we're more than 10 days. We're like 11 or 12 days away from this event happening. And if you know anything about it, that means fantasy land this far out. So all I will say is this. Whenever you get a negative AO that is tanking this deep, and a negative NAO that is tanking this deep, and you get a strongly positive PNA, that is a winter storm lover's dream. And I'll be honest with you folks, if you're wanting a stormy pattern here, then just pick your model. They all look good, but the reality is this is as good as a signal as you're going to get here for snow in the Ohio Valley. It just really is. You've got you've got a very strong negative. You got a very strong negative NAO right up here, and then with this coming back in off of here, what you have here is essentially the negative AO coming down sort of like this, and then back over in here with this, what you got is There's your positive PNA. And that sort of illustrates then for you well what you got, and so that sort of forces a nosedive in the jet stream in this way, and that blocking over here sort of forces this to slow down. And then sort of notice what this is right here. There is your polar vortex displacement, a lobe of the polar vortex coming down. And notice where the air is coming in off of this. So if we trace the air that's coming right back up into here off of these isobars, look at this. There's a little bit of potentially of some cross-polar flow coming on and coming down into there. So the source region for this, in other words, is going to be very, very cold. So that's something that we're really going to have to watch out for as time goes on, folks, to see whether this verifies or not. But I can tell you this, the signals look very impressive to me right now. And by the way, how long will this last? Well, I think this could last the rest of the month. Whenever you get a signal for the NAO, the blocking pattern this strong, and look what it's trying to do here, by the way. Would you just carefully notice you've got a big ridge right here, and then you got this big ridge right over here? Would you notice that they're trying to sort of build a ridge bridge here and sort of merge into one? If that blocking pattern really does set up, that could set up for a while. And by the way, the last time we had a good pattern that I can remember this good was about 2 or 3 years ago. So it's been quite a long time. The last good snow that we had really was almost 3 years ago here in southern Indiana. Last snow we had this year was a fluffy accumulation at the beginning of January. And then prior to that, the last accumulating snow we had was Valentine's Day 2016. It was only 1.5 inches here at the weather office. It wasn't that big, and there was a 3-inch one earlier that January. And prior to that, the last decent-sized snowstorm we had was in the spring of not the spring, the winter, early months, January, February of 2015 was the last decent-sized snowstorm we got, and that was also the last time that you saw a look this good. This looks really beautiful if you like cold and snow for the eastern part of the United States. If I were a betting man, I would look for, with a trough this deep, with a trough highly amplified ridge like this and a trough this deep digging down up into here sort of like this, if I were a betting man, I would look for storm developments to start somewhere down in here and then take a path sort of something like this. That would be a beautiful path for some snow. You could also end up getting some sort of clipper systems off of this as well. I think those are the two things that we're really going to need to look for over the coming month of December to see what verifies out with this. And by the way, the GFS isn't the only one snowing snow. The Euro's latest run does not, but its run last night had a little weak clipper system that moved in and dumped a couple of inches of snow on us here right around the 7th too. So again, that 7th to 9th time frame, right around in there is when that transition is going to take place. And it looks like we got a front moving through, so there could be some fun there with that. And if you go out and look further, I'll end on this, but just for giggles and fun here, this is the CFS modeled snowfall here for this is 35 days accumulated snow. So this takes you until the end of December essentially, and we'll just take a look at this. It's showing an active possible winter storm track right over the south here. Some right over the Ohio Valley too. You always take this with a grain of salt. Don't look at the exact numbers on this, and for that matter, the exact numbers here that you see in the GFS model run, again, this far out, they are meaningless. But what it points to is a pattern. It points to an active pattern possibly coming up, one that could be very favorable for winter storms here in the Ohio Valley. So that's it for now, folks, for this latest long-range update. As the time draws near, I'll have more of these, so keep it tuned right here to southernindianaweather.com here. Follow us, Southern Indiana Weather, on Facebook, at SouthernINWX on Twitter, at WillHiteWX on Twitter as well, and then here on our YouTube channel. Be sure to subscribe for long-range updates all throughout the winter. Take care.